And evidently, but the fact that the BBFC obviously turned around and gave it a 12 on the basis that they thought he'd said it as well, and then the manufacturers didn't go, hang on, no he didn't. They just went, all right, fine. And so the whole box set's got a 12 on the basis of that one.
Misheard. Well, it could be the fact they think they know, but they think most people assume he said that.
Well, that's a possibility as well.
And therefore protecting them from that.
Yeah, so you're protecting people from their own mishearing.
Which is even bizarre, because they didn't touch the bit where he calls Tweaky a cunt.
No, they didn't. They just left that there. And in fact...
In the opening credits for every episode.
It's slow motion as well, drawing it out and zooming in on his mouth, just forming every letter. It's a strange double standard.
Who knows what the BBC are up to.
There you go. There you go. On the front of things that scared you in a general way, as a kid, the other major ones I remember. I mean, as I said, the Space Vampire it gave me the creeps, but I was sort of attracted to it as well, as it indeed is Wilma Deering in the episode. So in some ways, I am her.
Don't say things like that. No. It might confuse me.
No, indeed, or indeed some of our listeners. I do resemble her in many ways.
Yeah, I have a very low sort of willpower in that respect. Just saying you're Wilma Deering might cause.
Yes.
The doctor to go into surgery.
Yes, indeed. But the other stuff that I particularly remember, I'd looked forward as a kid. You know, you used to get like the TV Times or whatever, and in the days before the internet, if something just said it was a program on the title, you had no way of getting further information about it other than sitting down and watching it. And there was something that was listed that I'll always remember: children's TV slot. You know, a sort of 4:20 or whatever, and it was listed as being called The Feathered Serpent, which I thought was a sort of interesting and evocative title.
Yeah.
And my brother, who's a couple of years older than me, had sort of gone, let's watch The Feathered Serpent. So all day I'd gone, I'll watch The Feathered Serpent when that's on, and we knew nothing about it. And I still don't know anything about it, and this is one that I haven't Googled, so I don't know if anybody out there knows anything about this, or we could just go and look it up. But anyway, I can remember sitting down, looking forward to it, quite happy, quite anticipatory. First image on the screen I seem to remember was an enormous skull just filling the screen with something behind it, and I just screamed and ran out the room, and I was utterly freaked out by it and never saw another frame of The Feathered Serpent. But I remember that. I also remember there was an Emu programme that had an ongoing sketch called Fracula and Drankenstein.
Right.
And that scared the piss out of me as well, to the point where I sort of ran out screaming into the street.
Grotbags terrified me.
Really?
Yeah. But I think... But
you were abducted by a fat green woman when you were a child as well, weren't you? So you probably...
Yes.
Those two incidents.
In fact, that might just be that.
It might just be that, yeah.
No, but I think children's TV unwittingly terrified me at points, well intentionally, and I think it's possibly when creatures or these supposedly humorous little characters were poorly realised.
Right.
So, do you remember Wordy?
Oh, vaguely.
It was a little kind of flying orange box with a face and letters on, and kind of arms out the side, but were basically in some kind of latexy thing. Fucking terrified me, and he had this weird voice, and I don't know, this kind of floating, disembodied. Mathematical head with latex arms, and something that I'd never seen, but have watched recently on YouTube and creeps me out now, was a character called Nosy Bonk.
Oh, Nosy Bonk is utterly terrifying.
And the clip online is it looks like something from A Clockwork Orange.
Yes, it really does.
Growing noses from plants which look like giant dildos.
Yeah, he's utterly horrifying. And I remember that being on telly.
Yeah. But then also, I think taking things quite often when things scared me, it was out of context. So, like you said about not actually seeing that program for the surface, just the image.
Yeah.
I was terrified of Tom Baker as a child.
Oh,
terrified. Right. Now, I don't have any.
But then you were abducted by Tom Baker.
Yeah, well, him and the Green Woman.
Him and the Green Woman. Yeah.
Yeah, that was horrifying. So that might just be that as well. No. I'd never witnessed Tom Baker as Doctor Who or have any memory of it.
But is that where it came from? I mean, sort of culturally?
Yes, but it was... so I grew up with Peter Davison. That was my first exposure to Doctor Who. Then Colin Baker. But really, when I was old enough to really get into it, was Sylvester McCoy.
Right, yeah.
But I still consider Davison as kind of my Doctor. But going back...
Don't put him down on forms. You know, where you have to fill in the name of your doctor?
Yeah.
Don't put on Peter Davison. I've got the number of times that I've ended up then in hospital and they're trying to contact him about allergies and stuff.
I bet it pisses him off.
He really gets hacked off with it.
Oh dear.
Well, it was a good joke, but it possibly wasn't worth derailing what you were saying to that degree.
No. I think it was well worth it.
Okay.
No, it was going and tracking down the VHS.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, I'll tell you the first point. I had a Doctor Who annual.
Right,
and there was two. Basically, you opened it. I can't remember the year of it. The inside cover.
Was this a Davison era?
I don't know, because it might have been a retrospective. So I can't remember whether they were referencing the current Doctor or past Doctors.
I think the annuals used to be the current Doctor.
It must have. I probably got it at a kind of book sale at school or something like that. Oh, do you remember book sales?
Yeah.
Anyway, opened the cover, and it was a kind of rocky landscape with the TARDIS and Tom Baker's Doctor poking his head out, and behind it were 3 giant serpent heads.
Right.
And it was painted all in kind of like using different purple hues, and that terrified me as an image. Just the fact that he had no idea what was behind him, and then that kind of.
But that made you scared of him, right?
Well, no, that was just a scary image at first, and I think the association with Doctor Who being terrifying, I just associated with him, based on that image. But then I found him a very strange-looking person, and the way quite often in the comics segments of the annual or the illustrated parts that went with the text stories, the way he was drawn, attempting photorealism with kind of. Made him look quite creepy. But the image that terrified me the most was the Revenge of the Cyberman cover, which is a picture of him, a really kind of fuzzy image, but with behind cracked glass, so his face is all fragmented.
Well, it's not behind cracked glass. It's
or a web.
It's the logo, the thing they do with the where logo goes through the tunnel.
Yeah.
It's got the tunnel, and then it's got that triangular logo. Yeah. It's the lines that are made by the angles of that logo as it goes down the tunnel.
That image terrified me, and to the point where I wouldn't buy that.
Oh right.
Because I thought that's creepy, and I went for the safer ones.
Like Brain of Morbius and stuff like that.
But then, I don't think I ever bought any Tom Baker at that point. And then I think the first one of these that I saw, which I really, really remember, would have been Genesis of the Daleks. And I actually found him quite engaging and not frightening once I actually put him in context. And then now, he's my favourite Doctor. But I think taking things out of context, images where you don't quite understand how they fit in, can be more frightening.
Absolutely.
Than actually building to a scare.
Yeah. Actually, with Tom Baker as the Doctor, when I was being a few years older than you, when I was a kid, he was very much the sort of contemporary Doctor, and I would occasionally dip in and try and watch an episode. But what happened was my dad used to watch Grandstand, which was on after Doctor Who. So every week, I'd see the cliffhanger. And it's the same thing you're saying about things out of context. So every week, I'd see some, the reveal of the monster or whatever, and then I'd hear that, and then into the credits.
That's very good.
Thank you. And so I really associated it with, my God, this show must be terrifying. And then I saw a couple of episodes full episodes, and I thought, oh, actually, no, it's all right, I'm not that horribly scared. And then something happened in an episode of, I think it was The Robots of Death, that scared me so much that I didn't actually watch it again properly until Peter Davison. So I sort of dipped my toes in with Tom Baker. I thought, oh, I kind of like it, but I'm kind of scared of it. And then something came along, I went, no, and I ran. And just Davison did.
I actually just come up with something else that's frightening me, and again, it's vampires. And this may sound bizarre, but Kenny Everett.
Right, no,
yeah. 2 things. One, I remember vividly, anything that broke the fourth wall frightened me.
Right, so people talking to camera. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you shat your own.
Well, no, but in a way, I remember the Kenny Everett show, and not just in case of engaging with the camera, but exposing the artifice of the news. So quite often where there'd be something and he'd break through the screen and almost come out of the TV ring style and engage with you that way.
Ring style? I don't think it's ever been described that way.
No, but that's I think that kind of almost like he was coming out of the show, obviously not out
to
on TV,
get you,
but then talking to me. That I didn't like that. But there was a sketch where he'd be a vampire and he'd have a top hat and kind of white face and fangs. And I think the sketch in particular, he was sitting on a train with 3 or 4 people, and as we go through a tunnel and be dark, when it came out the other side, one of them would be gone, and he'd be chewing as if he ate them.
Yeah.
And I think it ended where it got down to him and a woman, and when it came out the side, the woman was chewing.
Right.
And that scared the crap out of me. And I had 2 very specific dreams or nightmares where he was the key figure. And one was just watching him bouncing across the tops of buildings while I was in the car and trying to hide. And another one was where he was.
That's possibly the most disturbing thing I've heard all week.
He was in my garden, and these taxi drivers pulled up and tried to fight him off. And while they're fighting, I ran away and found that when I went down the side alley toward my garden, the entire wall where my house would be was gone, and there was a massive bed with these big kind of silk purple sheets, and in it was every single one of my family, all vampires, where he turned them all, and that's how my nightmare ended. So Kenny Everett as a vampire was just the most terrifying thing to me as a child.
Well, you see, the weird thing about that is that the real one with me, above and beyond the Feathered Serpent, above and beyond Doctor Who, and I don't even know if I've told you about the Two Ronnies thing?
No.
You actually don't know this story?
No.
Okay, because mine, exactly the same, ultimate childhood freak out, was the Two Ronnies did a sketch called Teeny Todd.
Right.
Which was their musical number. You know, they do their musical numbers at the end of the shows, and they're normally sort of fairly, you know, they'd already done a Star Wars spoof, they'd already done whatever. Two Ronnies was kind of my, felt like my safe place, you know what I mean? I sat and watched it with my parents and all that sort of, that sounds like I was a mental kid, say, it's my safe place. But no, you know what I mean? It felt comfortable. Nothing in the Two Ronnies had ever given me the creeps. It wasn't like, you know, if Kenny Everett or Doctor Who, which had already scared me several times, I'd always watch that a bit on edge. But Two Ronnies, I felt completely safe, completely comfortable, completely whatever. This sketch comes up, this Teeny Todd sketch, which was a riff on the Sondheim musical, but it had Ronnie Corbett in a ginger wig as Teeny Todd, and it had Ronnie Barker in full drag as Mrs. Lovett, and it had them singing the song "The Terrible Tale of Teeny Todd." But it had, during the course of this, several people sitting in the barbers' chairs getting their throats slit, and proper slit, as in fake blood pouring out. Then they go down the conveyor belt and they get turned into pies. And this wasn't ever anything I'd ever heard of as a you know, I hadn't heard the story of Sweeney Todd. I hadn't ever come across this, and so I had no context for this. All I knew was that these two comedians, who I normally, you know, I'd sit around with my mum and dad and we'd all have a laugh and whatever, there was suddenly fake blood going everywhere and people being turned into food, which has actually always been one of my other sort of worries. Not now, but you know, as a child, the idea of people being almost like Kenny Everett's chewing. The
Which
idea
is
of
strange,
people as food.
I'm a cannibal.
Oh, right. Well, if I'd have known that, I probably wouldn't have agreed to be shut in a studio with you. But these are the mistakes we made. But so I was, you know, that genuinely freaked me out to the point that the next time my mum took me to the barbers, I acted up completely, and I was just a nightmare and running around and whatever. I never told her that was the reason why. And so I was then punished by not being allowed to watch Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World that night, which was the one about Bigfoot that I've been looking forward to for ages. And again, it being before things were videoable, I've still never seen that episode. And so as a result of my fear, I ended up actually also getting punished by missing my favourite show. So it was all very traumatic.
I can imagine. And I do remember the Phantom Raspberry Glass.
Yes, that was from the same series. The series that has that as the ongoing thread, I think it's series 9. It came out on DVD last year.
Have you revisited it?
Well, you see, this is the thing. I revisited it when it got shown on UK Gold. When I thought it was around about this period, they were showing like a whole series a day.
Yeah.
And I Sky Plussed the whole lot and sat and just spooled through it, trying to work out which were, you know, to actually see this episode. And when I saw it on UK Gold, it was cut. They'd actually cut the throat slittings. And this isn't me remembering it being more graphic, as in there was a jarring music cut. It was missing bars out of the music, it was missing all this sort of stuff. And this was for a daytime showing on UK Gold in 2009.
Wow.
Now, the DVD that's got that on is, like we said before, about 12, ratings. That's a 12 rather than a PG, which most of the Two Ronnies ones are. And if you look that up on the BBFC site, it's contains moderate injury detail, which I presume is the throat slittings.
Yeah. Wow.
So it really freaked me out, and images from it still haunt my nightmares.
Yeah. Well, that's been a thoroughly... can I just ask, has that tainted your entire perception of the Two Ronnies? Would you still consider them a safe place?
No, not a safe place.
So if you were in solitary confinement...
I would imagine...
You wouldn't... Whereas before, your safe place would have been imagining the Two Ronnies...
I still find Corbett terrifying.
So
Corbett in a ginger wig.
That would actually worsen your situation.
Yeah.
So if I was to send someone to rescue you, shouldn't be Ronnie Corbett.
Probably not.
I'll make a mental note.
Excellent.
Well, I've been Dr. Gogol.
And I've been James Trick.
And I'd like to end on a cliffhanger so I can hear the Doctor Who noise again.
Oh, right.
So should we pretend a vampire has popped up?
Oh my God. Pew!